It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
All right, what's up? What's happening? Instant reaction show that's perhaps not quite so instant the morning after a Monday Night Football win in Cincinnati. I am Craig Hoffman, but we have subbed our Paulsens for this instant reaction show. Grant Paulsen with me from Cincinnati. Either a very nice hotel room or an Airbnb, looks like, GP?
We're going with an extremely nice hotel room. We've been spoiled rotten by our show sponsor, our buddies from the law firm who sponsors our show, Kondori and Murat. So we've got just an amazing trip that was laid out. And what we didn't bank on, but what we got was an exclamation point, which was one of the most impressive offensive displays by this football team in many years.
Yes, indeed. So Commanders come away with the victory, ending what was probably, I don't know whether this is actually historic, certainly in the realm in terms of underdogs winning over the NFL weekend. Like the biggest, I think it's the 5 biggest underdogs won by the end of the weekend, maybe 5 of the 6, because I think Jacksonville actually wound up being decently sized dogs by the end of it. And they did not win. Buffalo absolutely crushed them last night. But Washington was the biggest underdog of the weekend, 7.5 or 7 by the time kickoff rolled around, depending on what book you looked at. And they come out with the win, Grant. And it was interesting for me. I was watching it obviously at home on TV and watching that game with my wife, who is not the biggest football fan, but she's like, man, this is fun. This is great. This is the most exciting football game I think I've watched. Certainly covering this team for the decade that I have, that's probably the most exciting game that they've had in my time in DC. But, sir, you were there in the stadium, probably feeling internal joy and looking around at a bunch of Bengals fans, then going, man, these people are not feeling what I'm feeling. What was it like to be in the building last night for that?
So it was the complete opposite of anything that you're used to. First of all, right before kickoff, okay, so I'm sitting between my co-host, Danny Rouillet, and my producer, Darius Dameron, and we're surrounded, as you'd imagine, by Bengals fans. It was an unbelievably loud building. It was Monday night. Their season, so many ways, is on the line. Just an electric atmosphere. And they do this really cool thing pre-kickoff where, you know, everyone has this app and their phone somehow with technology I don't understand because I'm 100. Basically, your flash is taken over by this app and correlating to a song. There's like this performance done with the lights in the stadium. And when it happened, everyone lost their minds. So they're about to put the ball in the air and kick off. It's one of the loudest stadiums I've ever been in. And Danny looks over at me and goes, "Oh, no."
That classic Danny Rouillet optimism.
And I swear to you, this is what he said. He goes, "They're going to get curb stomped." And then sure enough, like 5 plays in, the Bengals just walk down the field. Jamar Chase touchdown, beats the corner, everything you worried about all week. But then they come out offensively in this environment where it's so loud and you're going, please don't go 3-and-out. They don't commit a penalty till the 4th quarter. They don't punt, right? For the second time in as many games, they didn't punt. They didn't turn the ball over. They haven't turned the ball over all season. It was a legitimately stunning, kind of breathtaking display. Like, obviously, a star was born, and Jaden Daniels is the story. He was nearly perfect. He was remarkable. But to me, this is bigger than that. Cliff Kingsbury was incredible. Their offensive design, pretty much everybody offensively did their job. It was just the ultimate efficient performance. But in terms of being there, I mean, there were points as we went on, like all the comical things you'd expect. Like the guy behind me is just, he's like, he kept referring to them, obviously it's the Redskins, but he's like, Washington, this team, like they couldn't believe it, you know? And it was just little by little, people would leave and we'd have more space. And they kept answering the bell over and over again. It got to a point, like you said, offensively, where they were so good in the first half that my point was, in this year where Jaden Daniels is kind of the story and the point, I kind of felt at halftime like, okay, you showed up, you didn't get embarrassed, you went back and forth. By the way, you're in the lead by double-digit points, essentially. It was an 8-point lead because of a field goal right before the half for Cincinnati. I thought the rest is house money. Like this is a net, like procedural, a net kind of process win already. I didn't think they would rip off a big return to start the second half and then continue the onslaught. But it was just a breathtaking night.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I come away from this game with, and I'm going to hit this one first. It's less significant than the second thing, which is on Jaden, but so I don't forget it. Like, there's a belief in that building, and this is proof of concept for Dan Quinn in a lot of ways, in terms of the attitude, the play style, the effort, the standard of like, hey guys, if we do this, we can compete. And they're not going to win at the rate that they've won so far, probably 2 out of 3. Like if they win every 2 out of 3, they're a hell of a football team. They're going to the playoffs. They're going to win the division because that's how the math works. But realistically, they'll just compete in a way that we didn't see last year. And I think that all of us, even through all the bad football that we've seen last year, the end of it with Rivera's tenure going down the tank, we saw uncompetitive football in a way for such an elongated stretch that we really understand and appreciate. At least I would hope that fans and those of us in the media and anyone that watches this team on a regular basis could appreciate what it means to compete, snap in, snap out. And you're seeing that with Quinn. And when you do that, and then all of a sudden you get execution at the level that you're getting, especially at the quarterback position, like you're going to give yourself a chance. And obviously we'll talk about the defense and there's some stuff to clean up there, but we can get there. Let's celebrate the good stuff first.
Yeah.
The second thing that I would say, it kind of in cahoots with that, Grant, is I can't remember watching a quarterback, certainly here, and there's probably a select few, the Mahomes, the Allens, et cetera, the very, very best, where the first word that comes to mind when I think about them is compete. And that is the whole mantra of this. You talk about proof of concept. Like the Adam Peters proof of concept is we're going to compete. Dan Quinn, compete. And Jaden, watching him, and this is something that you wouldn't have been able to see being there. Like you could probably feel it, but on the broadcast, they had these 2 outstanding shots of him on the 4th down plays, the last 2 4th down plays in the second half, saying, let's go. Like he's yelling at Dan Quinn, let's go. Like, what are we waiting for? I want this. On the, after they get one of them and they're, now trying to figure out, okay, what do we do next? They're trying to manage like the time situation and maybe slow play, giving Jaden the play so he doesn't snap it too much. And Jaden is screaming at Cliff Kingsbury, give me the play. He's like, I have this. Don't worry about it. I am in complete control. And to see that from a guy who's 23 years old in his 3rd NFL start, that level of compete, that level of control, that level of command, it's like, go look at the rest of the rookie quarterbacks in the league. That ain't normal. And to see that from this dude is something else. And it's why I think have so much hope. I think that we can balance that hope with some level of objectivity of going, it's not going to be this smooth. He's not going to complete 91% of his passes every game, but there's just a certain baseline you have with that level of competitor that is a much higher floor for this season and beyond than I think we've experienced in DC in quite a while.
Yeah, it's a great point. When we got back to the hotel last night, it was one of those games where we jumped on the couch in the suite and we're like, let's watch this game back. And so that was one of the things that first stood out to me was they were 3 for 3, by the way, on 4th down. So to the Dan Quinn point, plus territory, a couple times they could have kicked field goals. There was a killer instinct, right? There was a mindset that permeates down, I think, from your head coach. Like, no. We're not here to just extend the lead, make it an 8-point game. Like, let's go win a football game. But the power players, the most important people, Quinn and Jaden Daniels, I think were leaders in that, to your point, because it was so clear, like you said. It reminded me of Lamar Jackson with Baltimore, who routinely will yell at essentially in any short to go situation in plus territory at John Harbaugh, like, no, we're staying out, like, let's go. And Jaden in game 3 is not going to send the defense off the field and say we're staying out. But this is like phase 1 of that in a couple of years, basically, right? And it was awesome to see. Speaking of which, and we can get to this kind of later probably, but Jaden Daniels, who was masterful last night. It was like kind of all the things that I've dreamed of him ultimately becoming. And it's not linear. It's not like this is just going to be the thing now every game. But this was the perfect match of taking the shots and extending plays and resetting when scrambling and not just pulling the ball down and running and reading things out, but also running when he needed to. Like the faders were almost this is like the perfect setting. This is the manufacturer settings or whatever. Having said that, I think that what I saw last night, anytime there was short yardage, third or fourth down, I mentioned Lamar, like that cheat code where
Yeah.
it's just so hard to defend with what they're doing. Like, okay, we won't let Brian Robinson plunge for 2, but he can keep it and go around the edge. And it's just that back-breaking inability for teams in short yardage. You know, almost at probably a 70-some% clip because of this guy's, they go naked, or a couple of those that look like maybe they were rolling out to throw and they were designed. People are already blocking. Like, it was just a really good plan. It was the ultimate efficient performance. But I think you're totally right about Quinn, who had a really good night. I mean, everybody did. The one thing I'll say is, I don't want to say it won't be this easy, because the Bengals, that was on the road in a really, really loud, tough place. Having said that, like, nothing went badly. I mean, that is not how football normally goes. They were excellent on first down, right? I mean, they were ahead of the chains almost all night long until the very end of the game when they had a sack and got pinned back, and even then overcame it. But not one penalty called against them, not one. So you're never behind the sticks. Again, no turnovers. It was just a game where kind of like the stars aligned that you were able to stay on script. Like, all the stuff you write down all week for Cliff, it's right there if you want it. And that's very rare in this league. Very, very rare. But that doesn't mean you get to take advantage of it, as you know, Craig. And they certainly did, and they put on a clinic.
Well, on that front, one thing on Quinn that I will say, I appreciate how much the staff lives in reality. They know their kicker is Austin Seibert. Like, they have a reality that we can't kick 50-yarders. That's not who this dude is. Like, we signed a guy that is perfect in his career under 40 and not very good over it. And you've seen this on kickoffs. Like, they are ready to cover kicks because they know he cannot boom it through the end zone reliably. They made a decision that we're going to make sure that we're not going to, we're not going to leak away points. I was like, how can I say this that we could play this again later on the radio? How do we not leak away points? And it's like, okay, if we got a 37-yarder, we want to reliably make it. That's the kicker that we're signing. 50-yard field goals are off the table for us. And that's how Dan Quinn is making decisions. And it affects everyone because Cliff then can call plays on third down, and that like, are we going to punt? Are we going to, try to pin him inside the 10, or is it a long field goal zone? It was like, none of that's on the table. We're going for it on fourth down. Let's make sure that we make it fourth and manageable if we don't get it here. So let's call plays accordingly. So that's great game management from Dan. It's great game management from Cliff. But I would say the other part that is so important that I'm really glad you highlighted there is the game flow. And defensively, they have issues. That is very obvious. Their main issue is they can't cover. And the 1B to that is they can't rush the passer at all. But you can get away with that if you're up, because you can now play these cover 2, like, bigger structures in the back end with lighter boxes, and you don't really care if they run the football because then they're self-defeating because they're running the clock out. And so having those lighter boxes was a huge issue earlier in this game when it was close. Now all of a sudden you get a couple of stops, you bend but don't break, you force a field goal, you build a little bit of a lead. Now Cincinnati's chasing the game, and it's like, okay, sure, gash us for 7 yards. Now it's 2nd and 3, but you've also wasted 40 seconds in a game where you need multiple scores to come catch us. And we can, bend but don't break, bend but don't break. And if you score on us in the red zone, fine. You have to not give up the play like BSJ did at the end, obviously, where it's like, Joe, you've gone cover 2 the entire day. You've gone quarters the entire day. Literally every time you've played single high safety, they've crushed you deep. Why did you do it there? I don't really understand that call. Trying to mix it up, I guess, not give Joe Burrow the same look every time, but I would have just continued to play the clock game there. But in terms of concept, it's kind of how Dan played in Dallas, right? Is we know we have a great offense on the other side. We can give up some in the run game, play with these lighter boxes, and get away with it. And I think that game flow element and being really clean offensively is going to be super important if they legitimately want to win games. And it's how they can overcome being undermanned on the defensive side, because they're going to make teams earn it in such a way that their offense can make up for.
Yeah, and you could easily see, in a game where let's just say, like in Arizona this coming week, right? The idea is you're going out there. By the way, they're already flying out and staying there all week, which is fascinating. Yep. We could get into that. But let's say you're going out there and you get the ball first, and there's a holding penalty or whatever. You're behind the chains, you have to punt. And they score, go up 7-0. You go down the field, get a field goal. They score again because your defense just isn't that good. And you're down 14-3. Like, it is a completely different everything, right? And I think that's kind of my point was, yesterday was 2 parts. It was the offense at the peak of its powers, like playing well. Everyone kind of, when you think of Terry McLaurin, his strengths, what he's good at, what he can do at a high level, it's that last night, right? He does have the speed still. We all knew that, like vertically, but he is a get behind you, kind of stack you behind him and make that contested catch over his shoulder. Like if you're making a statue of Terry McLaurin, that's what it looks like. He did it a couple of times. He goes for 100. Austin Eckler, which him being lost to the concussion stunk, and I really hope he can play for multiple reasons, that he's healthy and because they need him. He's really helpful to the offense. But like they used him perfectly last night. First 2 plays, he goes gets 7 yards on a run out of a look where they've been throwing it all season, and then they come back and they get him a completion later on the drive, a big screen. Like everyone was kind of used in the way where you go, oh, I like that, and what they're good at. But also the game script kind of dictated that it was, styles make fights, they say, or whatever. It played out exactly how a good Washington performance is going to. Now, that having been said, like there is, let's play well. And then there's what happened with Jaden Daniels, who was just locked in a way. I mean, there were 2 incompletions. The missed throw deep to Terry early, and then that like fade ball into the other end zone, also to McLaurin on a 3rd down before the only Seibert field goal. All night, those are the 2. Those are the incompletions. It was textbook, man. And I got to say, after 1 week, I was really dubious about some of the stuff Kingsbury was doing pre-snap. But I'm not just saying this after last night because it was a masterpiece. But like, and I will say being there live helps a lot too. Like some of his formational structures and the spacing and like how he had guys aligned where the Bengals are shifting out into space and then they're running these little hooks in the middle of the field. Like you kind of see it coming together a little bit. Like he deserves so much credit right now. Obviously, you're seeing Shane Waldron and who I think's done a terrible job with Caleb Williams in Chicago.
I hate what they're doing in Chicago.
It's awful. I mean, and I'm not trying to excuse Caleb Williams who hasn't played well, but like he's getting no help conceptually speaking. It's legitimately bad. Like this is the opposite of that. And if I'm Dan Quinn, I would just be really, really happy waking up this morning. Last night, notwithstanding, like awesome, you beat the Bengals. What's happening with your quarterback, what your coordinator's doing to help him. It's been a really, really good situation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Cliff because I have been, I think, more complimentary of Cliff than like, frankly, you have. I'm not gonna sit here because Grant's on the pod. We're not gonna say anything. But like, I think my thing has always been what things are now are not what they are going to be, and I think sometimes we lack the imagination to see where things are going. And I think that they understood we need to make sure that Jaden gets comfortable and understands the speed of the game, and we need to ramp him. That has been this entire process, right? Is like, we're going to make you beat out Marcus Mariota. Is that a very difficult task? No. Marcus Mariota is not good. Jaden Daniels is good, but we're going to make him do it. And so that is very different than, say, in Chicago, where they handed Caleb Williams the keys to the kingdom and told him that he is God immediately. And not that, Jaden Daniels wasn't as equally important to the Commanders as Caleb Williams was to the Bears, but the process of making him earn it and go through it also very much speaks to who Jaden Daniels is as a competitor, but it kind of just eases the pressure and it ramps up to this more full version. And some of those screens and things, it teaches Jaden like, hey, these are the things we're looking for. We're trying to get good advantageous numbers in the run game and the screen game. A lot of those screens, by the way, are decisions that Jaden makes pre-snaps. It's box counts. It's like, oh, hey, run here if the box is light, screen there if we've got numbers there. And teams were, gearing up to stop Brian Robinson, so he winds up throwing a ton of screens, but it's really, to use that classic phrase, an extension of the run game. But what you see is like, I think Cliff also realized like he can handle a little bit more. If I don't give him a little bit more, he's not going to be in a rhythm when we need him to make a play on 3rd down. And so they subbed out some of those calls for some of the quick game stuff you're talking about, those quick comeback routes and things like that. And you see him hit a couple more of those tonight. And then he's in that rhythm. And in the biggest moments, he's taking those deeper shots. And I think Troy Aikman was awesome on the broadcast. It's actually one of the best games I think I've heard a color analyst call for Washington in a long, long time, because he talked about earlier in the game how Jaden has missed some of those deep shots. And I think that's the other part of it with Cliff is like some of what people were looking for was there and the quarterback hadn't executed yet because he was in his first and second games. And so there was only going to take so long with how hard Jaden works and how studious he is to go like, okay, they tell me it's there, I'm going to trust it. And sure enough, and not only in some big spots throughout the game, but the literal biggest spot where he stares down the barrel of a blitzing DB who just absolutely decleats him. Like Jaden is off of both feet when he gets hit on that touchdown to Terry late. And Terry was like, trust me. And Jaden's like, okay. And how often has Terry told these quarterbacks, the 742 that he's played with, trust me, and they never have. And I think you see the results. So Cliff, I think, has done a really good job of making sure that Jaden is comfortable with everything that they've put on his plate, which means steadily increasing the amount on his plate. And they put the most they have so far on his plate last night. And you see the results of that successful ramp. Yeah. I think it's just a reminder to close this, Grant, like what is now is not what will be. And there's a constant adjustment. And by the way, that could also work in a bad way because Cliff now is typically not what Cliff is in November and December. And I'm hoping that changes this year for the better because that's traditionally been a bad thing. But I think we need to make sure if we want to be smart about talking about this team and the game in general, we need to give room for growth and change and all the confluence of circumstances that go into the adaptation over the course of a season. And I think we're seeing that in real time and for what right now is an extremely positive way.
Yeah, I mean, from minute one of the season, I've kind of liked how they've design things, and I've loved the play calling. Like when I say that after a week or really at halftime of game number 2, I was growing frustrated. What I'm talking about with Cliff, it's not really his like what he's trying to accomplish or what he was calling. It is that I've got 4 years of data of something that isn't very good in the league right now that he did in Arizona that he brought with him, it seemed like, to Washington. Like pre-snap stuff, there's a lack of motion. He's dead last in the league as a play caller over 5 years. There's a lack of moving your top guy around. There's a lack of getting under center, honestly. The drop back game, play action, like all this stuff that is, frankly, especially with now the way the league is playing with the 2 deep safeties and trying to take away some of the daggers and stuff in the middle of the field and some of the shots, like the Saints who scored on every single drive for 2 weeks. Now that's an old story because now that's Washington. But the Saints, they're under center 70% of the time running these play action shots. And so there's never been enough of that in his offense. It's just not the way I like it done, so to speak. And that was kind of my annoyance. As you're pointing out, though, like we're going to see what they add and don't. I don't think they're going to have a lot of that ever. They're going to do something different, I guess is my point. If you're Cam Taylor-Britt, you call it a college offense as the ball flies over your head. And by the way, that was beautiful that it was Cam Taylor-Britt. With Terry McLaurin. It was,
although it got to the point that I actually felt a little bad for him because he didn't mean it as a like. If you go watch the initial video and his response last night, where he's like, "I don't really regret it. Like I didn't mean it as a negative." It's like, yeah, they were running a ton of screens and then trying to hit fade balls and like running the quarterback a lot.
But the thing is, I said last night at the game, like it was taken as this pejorative, and I was actually talking to a Bengals fan about this who was like crushing him. He's like, he shouldn't have said anything. I don't think he meant it in a mean way. Like,
the problem is that's not how the media cycle works.
By the way, it kind of is. The difference is a lot of teams run that. Like Saturdays and Sundays are blending together. So like, okay, I guess. And it was taken as like some bulletin board material. But anyway, it was just kind of funny that he was the guy. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how they continue to add what they add, if any of those things. Like Terry McLaurin on the touchdown even joked after the game. He's like, look, I line up on the left a lot. He's like, but McLaurin went over and called his own number in that play and was like, put me on the right and let me run a go ball by myself. And Cliff was like, okay, cool. And my point is like we should just be moving. We should be seeing Terry McLaurin all over the formation. We should be seeing a little more motion. But I'm not going to critique anything when you haven't punted into. I don't know if Tressway is still on the team. So
well, he is because he's holding for the extra points after they score.
He is the personal holder. They will, and you alluded to this, there will be adjustments made as now teams figure out what they're trying to do, right? What Jaden likes and doesn't like, his strengths, whatever they perceive to be his weaknesses. And my thought before the year was, I thought Jaden Daniels would get off to a really fast start. And the reasoning is like covering Griffin, seeing that 2012 offense. I thought there would be a little more of the stuff we didn't see in the preseason, just like something brand new. And there really wasn't. But the point is, like, this is now baseball where, okay, you went 4 for 4, 3 for 3, 4 for 4, and you got some home runs. And now teams are going to adjust. And how do you adjust? And like that chess match is about to start in the next week or two. And I really, really am excited for that.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll obviously be covering it here on the pod. And the last thing I'll just say on like the Cliff motion stuff is like all that stuff exists for a reason. And Kyle and Sean and Kevin, I do think that's the optimal version of like, hey, we're trying to create certain matchups, give our quarterback certain information. But Cliff does a lot of that stuff in other ways, specifically with formations and personnel. And what I appreciate about Cliff is he's added some of the motion and added some of the moving around without losing who he is, because he's got to be comfortable calling plays and have an understanding of how it's going to go. And he's sprinkled in at key moments, hey, let's put Terry in the slot. Hey, let's move Terry to the right. Well, yeah, he's going to line up mostly on the left, in part because they're trying to go tempo, and having your receiver run 40 yards across the field slows you down and makes them tired. And so if we're just going to continually go, just like, hey, Terry, go there, go there, go there, go there. It takes some of the literal time and running for McLaurin out of it. But you do need to mix in some, and he has. And they were under center at certain points last night, and there are advantages to that. Or they're using pistol to get some of the similar advantages. So I really appreciate how, like, I think Cliff, it's not that he hears the criticism, right? It's that he realizes that the criticism, to the extent that he even acknowledges it, is coming from a real place of, hey, this is a problem that we need to solve, and this is the solution. And I feel like he's done a really good job of feeling that out this year. I also appreciate, I'll say this real quick on the way out, we will both talk about the defense more on our radio shows this afternoon on 106.7 The Fan for Grant and Danny, and of course the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. But like defensively, they're understaffed. They have problems, but they're not asleep at the wheel. Like they're trying stuff. They're trying to figure out the best way to work with this. Putting Sainer still outside and Benagane inside. It's like, okay, well, Mikey's having some troubles inside. Noah's probably better there right now. That we need to try something else at outside corner. Like the fact that they're trying stuff and they're not asleep at the wheel, I appreciate. I don't know that there are good solutions. It might just be a next year problem. But my general final takeaway, Grant, is that this staff is not asleep at the wheel. They're trying stuff. They are trying to compete. They are living up to the things that they preach. And it's not always going to go as well as it did last night on the scoreboard. But we're in for, I think, a very fun season because of some of the decisions that they're making across the board.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I think that I'm stunned with – I didn't think they'd be strong as a pass rushing group. I am very surprised with how little pass rush consistently they're getting. They thought, and I don't mean this just externally with what they've said, but internally with people that I've talked to dating back to the offseason. I think they thought the collection of edges they put together would win more often to this point. They went and got Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler. Maybe some of this is still coming, right? Armstrong and Fowler combined for their first true sack. But sacks are a stat, but whether it's pass rush win rate and pressures and some of those things, that's got to come. The strength of that D line is going to have to be Allen and Payne getting up the field and pushing the pocket. But I only bring this up to say, like, I think they knew all along, or they should have, certainly. We all did. If they're not generating some kind of rush, either schematically or by winning, they're in big trouble because their personnel at corner just isn't close to good enough. And I will say it felt like watching the game in person, every handoff, everything that wasn't a shot down the field last night was a blessing for Washington because they just couldn't cover Chase. And really Higgins for that matter. I don't know that there's a good answer. I think that they've got guys that are going to exhaust themselves trying to find it. But the point is, if you can dictate terms, you can better mask your own deficiencies. And last night they were able to do that. And you just hope there's more games coming like that, where to the point that you made earlier, if you've got the lead, it is the best friend that you can have other than time of possession, where they had another 33-minute game last night. And like, those are the ways you can try to survive what is going to be, death by eventual paper cut or gash. I don't know, but it's not pretty on the back end.
For sure. And, they've been all right in the red zone. And that's the thing is, like, take away the deep shot as a possibility because no longer do you have the space for an actual deep shot. And this defense becomes much, much tougher to score on. And so it's going to be bend but don't break, and there's going to be a lot of swearing at the TV while they're bending. But if they can bend but ultimately not break, and the offense can perform like they have, then they can win some football games. And they have so far 2-1. We'll talk about it more this afternoon. For me on the team, 980 from 4 till 7. Grant 2 to 6:30 on 106.7 The Fan, GND. GP, appreciate you doing this, dude. This was fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun, man. Keep up the good work. And the other Paulson will be back in the saddle, hopefully in no time to break it down.
Yes, he will. We'll be back, in fact, with a film review tomorrow. So Wednesday, we will have that in your podcast feeds as soon as we get done recording it and our producer edits it. Hopefully we don't mess up so much and there's not that much editing so we can get there faster. GP, thank you, sir, and safe travels back.
See you, buddy.